skate park locations. Oh, just kidding. Stand by.
Y'all are jumping the gun.
Sorry.
Bob, can you call the meeting to order one more time? I'm sorry.
Yes. I bring the Parks and Recreation Committee to order and I'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Good evening. The first item on our agenda is discussion of the future skate park location. As you all know, in our current budget, there are funds allocated to design a new custom concrete skate park. The existing site which is on the handout that I provided you all this evening. It is 0.91 acres. It is a slightly odd shape. The size of that site is going to limit some of the things that we could potentially build, the amount of parking, restrooms, other amenities that would be placed on that site. So if we were to design it for that site, which I do think it could hold, the size skate park that we're looking to build, it would just be very site specific. So I did want to bring it to council tonight, just see if there were any alternate locations. One that I did briefly discuss with Mr. Jackson is a site in Oak Brook. That's showed on the second page that you all have with you tonight. That's near the Stars and Stripes location. That particular site is 1.89 acres. So it would give us a little bit more flexibility. I am aware that there are some concerns with that property, but I at least wanted to have a conversation with all of you before I move forward or trying to get that project started.
Yeah, and I think in between on it. Downtown, I mean, being down here does seem more centralized. But the site over towards Oak Brook, you have more room and it's property that the county will be giving us. So I could see it going there also and having this for maybe some other community thing that more people from all the town would go to. I don't have a strong feeling either way.
Yeah, I'm with Councilman Jackson. I don't necessarily have a strong feeling either way. My one concern with the spot near Stars and Stripes is, every time I've went there, there seems to be a heavy police presence there, and I would hate for that to end up being the same situation at this location, since it is so close to Stars and Stripes. Excuse me. And we've evaluated all other possible sites, I suppose.
That I'm aware of, yes. I'm not aware of another site. One thing that I did discuss with Mr. Jackson is the need for a community garden. So I think either site potentially could be that. So regardless of where we put one, potentially, using the other for an alternate use.
So let me ask you, how'd you come to get the spot at the Ladson Road there at the Stars and Stripes?
That property is owned by Dorchester County. That's the piece of property that they were looking to develop. And they were interested in coordinating a project or development of that property with the town in conjunction with the town. Ms. Wallace and I have a meeting with them later this month to discuss, some potential opportunities. We just wanted to get y'all's feedback or input on whether your preference would be to keep the skate park at its current location or potentially consider that site as a location for it.
And how big, excuse me, Bob, how big is that spot?
The one in Oak Brook is 1.89 acres. The one where it currently is 0.91 acres.
The property abutting the 0.91 acres is owned by the school, right?
It is, yes.
Do we know if are they utilizing all of that?
No, it is all one parcel, so it would have to be subdivided. But there is a little bit of space there. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you exactly how much.
I guess would Chief Wright, At Stars and Stripes, do we have much other than fights and shootings?
No food yet, sir, but they pay us to be there on Fridays and Saturday nights, in addition to their armed security that's already on staff. Other than that, we don't get a lot of call volume, except for those times on the weekend. But they have us out there in a capacity to make sure they're.
Okay, thank you. I think with that, I know this has been tossed around for 10 or 20 years because of homeless people. There used to be a big berm there and the homeless would live behind it. We got that taken down and we've been trying to find a use since. And it has to be kind of secure because there's actually access to the tunnel from the Edisto River on that property, the tunnel that goes to Charleston. So between the homeless and all, I think what I might like to see is we put the skate park there, then it's open, it's fenced, and we can monitor it. So that kind of pushes the homeless out of that area. And it would make it more difficult for drugs and that kind of thing to be happening right in that area. Yeah.
My other concern with that is the existing location is more in a walkable, connected area. And if kids are using it, I mean, Latson Road is a large highway almost now. I mean, connected very close to Dorchester Road. Probably just gonna get worse. I don't know how easy that would be for kids to get there versus the town property. You know, it'd be great if the school would love to just donate, you know, another little acre or something right there, half an acre.
I
Right
can
there.
certainly reach out and start that conversation if you guys want me to try that first.
I think what I'd like to do is make a recommendation. We move it to council for discussion.
So moved.
I agree. I'll second that.
All in favor?
The second on the item, or second item on the agenda tonight, I apologize, is approval to dedicate Field 6 at Gahagan Park in memory of Barbara Coaster, volunteer of the Somerville Girls Softball League. This came as a request from the Somerville Girls Softball League. Miss Barbara, she was instrumental in the creation of the Somerville Girls Softball League, and she volunteered with that organization for 45 years. She recently passed away, and so what they'd like to do is dedicate that field and install a bronze plaque in her memory.
I'm good with that. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I certainly move that we approve this. I remember Miss Coster and over there at Dillon Field when we had this.
Mhm.
Second.
Oh, yeah, I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Hey,
Thank you. The third item on the agenda is a request to draft ordinance for consideration to support smoke, tobacco, and vape-free town parks. Having smoke, tobacco, and vape-free parks is a very common practice. Every local department that I either researched or reached out to, including the city of Charleston, Mount Pleasant, Goose Creek, Moncks Corner, Charleston County Parks, all have similar policies in place. In fact, I could not find anyone who did not have one. Not to say that they don't, but I could not find them. Similar policies can be found regionally and nationally as well. The benefits of a policy are vast, including promoting health and wellness, stewardship of our natural resources and environment, better customer service and cleanliness of our facilities, and inclusivity as those who can't tolerate secondhand smoke are able to enjoy our parks and facilities. With your support, I will work with Mr. Parker and our legal team to draft an ordinance for consideration.
I'll make a motion that we draft that ordinance.
do I hear a second?
Second.
The one concern I kind of have is it has to be enforced. And our police are already stretched. And Chief Wright, if I could ask you, is it possible to deputize Parks and Recreation personnel to write citations on smoking?
would think not, but if it's an ordinance, I'm sure the code enforcement could.
I'll research it, but I don't think so. If the statute to deal with it, we can find out, I'll get the ordinance drafted first.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I think that would involve, we could put some small signs on Hutchinson Square, but I think really locking that up is kind of treading on people's right to use it freely, clutter it up, so.
And I do think that we would be fooling ourselves to think that we're gonna eliminate this completely in our parks. I do think it is completely feasible for us to reduce it greatly, and I think that that reduction alone would make a significant impact.
Do everyone that agrees, say aye.
Aye.
The third item on the agenda is approval to submit a grant to the South Carolina Forestry Commission to support a food forest. This grant opportunity was brought to me by Ms. Schuler in our planning division. Before I jump in, I'll kind of define a food forest for those that aren't familiar with the concept, but it's just a diverse planting of edible plants that attempts to mimic the ecosystems and patterns found in nature. The town arborist and I identified a potential location within Wassamasaw. If you look at the last map in that packet that I gave you, the very back right corner of that facility, it's not really being used on anything. It's beyond the asphalt trail, if you're familiar with that park. We felt that Wassamasaw was a natural choice, given it already has several mature pecans in the facility, and a lot more space than some of our other parks do. Once the food forest would be established, anyone could come in and harvest the food that was produced. One of the main benefits of having this also is education. We can use it to teach the community how to grow sustainably, or just sustainably grow food. The South Carolina Forestry Commission currently has a grant available for food forest. The program does have a match, but we would use staff and volunteer hours to meet this requirement, so it wouldn't cost us anything to install it, other than the labor. So before applying for these funds, I did want to just have a conversation with the Parks and Rec Committee and make sure this was a project that you guys wanted us to pursue.
Tell me something.
Yes, sir.
In the area in which we live, the Tri-County area, where's the nearest food forest?
In West Ashley, ran by the Charleston Conservancy. I think they opened one maybe a year and a half ago.
Is this something like a food garden?
It essentially is. Yeah, it would have 7 layers. It gets very in-depth. But essentially it's got, you try to put a lot of native things in it as much as possible, or things that would grow in that area. You'd have your trees, your understory, the vines on the ground, things like that. So it is very natural. And what you're going for is that it's essentially sustainable on its own. Certainly would require some maintenance and input. It would be something that we would look to do or maintain heavily with volunteers, and then also provide educational programs and activities there.
Are they supported or helped in organizations like Clemson Agriculture Department?
So the Clemson Extension, the town arborist and I did meet with the Conservancy staff last week, or maybe this week, I'm not sure. Oh no, it's only Monday. So it was last week. So we did meet with her, and she was, they work closely with Clemson Extension as far as the types of planting, the cultivars and those things. So we would work with them as well to make sure that we got the right, they would connect us essentially with the growers that we needed.
And they produce food that's available to people who need it.
You're not going to expect a large crop the first couple of years, but as things take hold and they grow, it would be anybody who was in that park that came there could, if the food was ready, could harvest it.
Would this take additional staff to maintain it? Would we have to hire anyone in the future or in recent future? at any point to maintain this?
No, the Conservancy said they have one staff member dedicated that goes out there 1 day a week and spends about half a day out there. Theirs is a half acre. Ours is not going to be but a fourth of that maybe. So it's going to be much smaller than theirs would be. But no, again, we're looking to kind of incorporate this into our existing volunteer program and use those in the community that are willing to come out and donate time to maintain it.
Would adding vegetable gardens, plots that people can use be something we might want to think about out there?
Well, I don't think that would be a part of the food garden. I have had every year, at least one or two people reach out to me about wanting community gardens, and that's more in line with that concept. I think that is an idea that we could look at potentially for either the Oak Brook or the skate park site, whichever one we don't use. I think either would potentially be a good fit.
Okay.
I know in big institutions like MUSC, they've got them all over the grounds and people come and volunteer and they grow produce and some people collect it. And so I guess it has some good merit. And I remember a long time ago when I had apartments on the east side in the city of Charleston, they didn't have any kind of, it was like a desert. And they started growing produce with the help of the kids from the colleges downtown. It became a big success, you know. So I guess it has its merit. I would certainly vote to let's see if we can do this and maybe it'll help some people.
And I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
And that's everything tonight. Thank you all.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
We'll open up our public work. We'll open up our Public Works and Committee on Water Supply meeting.
Right. Hello, thank you. The first item on the agenda, I'd like to give y'all some project updates. It's the first update, maybe not a project, but just the storm update with Public Works. Our fleet, the generators look good. That's what they let me know. All the generators are ready. Ready to go if the power goes out. And tomorrow morning, they have a truck coming in to top off the fuel tanks. So that'll be done. The streets department, all the bulk and yard debris have been picked up. They plan on running regular schedule, tomorrow and helping out stormwater where needed. And then, of course, there's a 5-man crew that's on backup. So if something happens tonight where they're needed, they're ready to go there. And stormwater, Lisa gave y'all an update where, they've just been busy all day, hitting the flood prone areas, cleaning out catch basins and outfalls, in preparation for the rain that we're going to get. All right. Next project update is the Springview Lane Detention Pond. That was a flood control project that went out for bid earlier this year. It was funded by a RIA grant. It started in February. They were substantially complete in May. We had the final inspection just a couple weeks ago to close the project out. And Pam is currently submitting for the reimbursement from the RIA.
Is that the rural infrastructure
It
grant?
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make it
Yeah.
check that one out really quick. Check that
It
one
was-
out really quick, see how it does.
Right, I
Yeah.
know, exactly. Yep. The next one is Lee Street Sidewalk. This has been in the books for a while and we have had some progress we have one property owner who did not want to provide slope permissions, which was needed. We are making progress there. We just need to get a new slope permissions document created and the engineer is finalizing the construction drawings. So that should be done within the next month or two. And then we can be ready to go out for bid probably later this year or early next year.
Good.
So that is very exciting. And then the last project updates is some of the pedestrian infrastructure, the RRFBs, rapid rectangular flashing beacons on top of the crosswalks. We have gotten reports, from the Weatherstone residents on Bear Island Road, at their two crosswalks that they have not been working, and we've just been waiting for the replacement part. Those came in, and have been replaced along with the one closest to town hall that was taken out by an 18-wheeler several months ago. They had to order a brand new, the pole and everything, all of it. And that's been replaced.
Is that the one that was right there at the entrance of Town Hall and the bank? Where we
Yes.
put that crosswalk?
Yes. The one that was on the other side of the road, and then it was the one the closest side to, I guess it's the east side.
Yeah.
Got taken out. And so
Okay.
that was replaced probably a week or two ago.
Okay.
Put that back up. Okay. Any questions on anything?
Yeah, can you give us an update to the entrance at South Point?
I do not have an update there. I know they had been, the lights on South Point Boulevard had been out. Dominion Energy was contacted. I spoke with them today and they are up and working. I know at the end of last week, we'd gotten a lot of calls about lights being out, so those are working now. But the road construction, the last I heard, it was probably week before last, August the 14th was when the contractor would mobilize back in there.
What about, do we know if his bond is still active?
It is.
So it
is.
has not expired?
It has not expired. I know we pulled the bonds. We pulled the bonds recently and looked at it. And so they are still active.
Okay. What are the next steps with that situation? Because it's been, as you know,
I know.
lingering on.
It's, yeah, as soon as like making a step forward, take a step back. We could access the bonds if we want to go that way, but then it would be getting a contractor out there and making, doing the work. Whether just waiting for their contractor to get back out there and finish the work.
And what year and month about did that project begin with that turn lane? Because I know it's been a long time.
It has, I know it started back in, I want to say 2016. No, when they submitted the first phase of that last section, and it kept getting pushed out and yeah. And then the project started, I want to say 2020, maybe, where they started construction, 25, maybe
turn
it's
lane.
not that. I don't know for
Okay.
sure, but it's been going on
I know it's
for
been a
over
couple
year.
years,
Yeah.
but, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm. Okay, the next item is an update on the Central Avenue sidewalk. Fortunately, we got 3 bids this time. It was out for rebid because the first time we bid it, we did not receive bids. In the amount of about 765,000, 800,000, and roughly 965,000. Yes, the funds from that will come from, we have a $400,000 state earmark, and then the rest will come from our sidewalk capital funds. And that's going to be on the finance committee later. Just something to note with that project, we are going to need some construction management and CEI work, construction inspections. There's going to have to be some night work in areas of Central Avenue. And so that'll be an additional cost that I'm currently seeing if the county could possibly help with.
That was my question,
Getting
because at
bids.
one time we were going to maybe ask them if they would contribute to the cost since some of those properties are in the county.
And
Mhm.
even assistance with maybe management of the, overall management of the project as well.
Right, right.
Making headway there.
Right.
No headway,
Oh,
no,
no, not yet.
no takers.
What is the, as soon as we award, them, what is their start date?
The start date could be as early as later this month, end of August, beginning of September.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't, signed the contract yet, but
Uh-huh.
I hope they could get mobilized that quickly.
It's already permitted, right? Is it?
It
Yeah,
is.
So it's ready to go.
It
If
is
show-
ready to go. Hmm.
What's the estimated time for completion of a project like that?
6 months
Okay.
is the time.
Cause it's what is it, like a half a mile?
It's a mile. It's a little over a mile.
Okay.
Mhm. And there's a retaining wall in a certain area
Uh-huh.
and some drainage work that'll need to be done.
Are
Yeah,
they
we'll
putting-
go around some of the big trees that are there, but some trees will need to be taken out.
Is curb included in that as well? Is
There
curbing?
will be in a particular section, like closer into town,
Mhm.
there will be, and to tie into the existing sidewalk.
Right, because I mean, there's no curb on Central Avenue all the way down, so I just. curious.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and then the last item is about an abandonment of a drainage easement at 214 Bamert Street. Earlier this afternoon, I discussed this with GW, and ultimately, I don't think this needs to go to Public Works Committee. It's all been finalized. So, there we go.
Even better.
Okay,
Okay.
motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All right, a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, right.
Oh, we got it.
It's basically very
Good.
standard, right?
Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. I've had 5 inches of rain today.
You-
You got a hand up too.
That's right.
All right, we have everyone up here. We'll go ahead and call the Finance Committee meeting to order and turn it over to you, Miss Rhonda.
All right, good evening. I think you have a hard copy and maybe on your screen as well of the July financial report. We had a quick turnaround as far as month end and getting these reports done. So we did our best to get everything in here, but it was there's still a few things that we'll have to be recording next month. The total revenue collected for the month is just under 1.2 million. The expenses for the month, 3.5 million, for a deficit of around 2.4. Transfers in from hospitality are about 292. I do want to point out the way the current budget works in the far left-hand corner. Last year, I had use of fund balance as a category. It's not really an account. It's not really, nothing actually gets booked to it, but I felt like I did that. So the budget was balanced, but truthfully, when we use fund balance, our expenses exceed our revenue. So I wanted to present it that way in this report and how it will look, if y'all are okay with that, for the remainder of the year, where we have total revenue, you know, the 43 million, the expenses, we have a deficit of the 6.3, and then transfers. And the very bottom line in the first column is the use of fund balance, which is the 2,104,340. So that's really what a use of fund balance is really your budget in a deficit position. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, it bothered me all last year. Next slide is the detail of the revenue. Obviously, property taxes, we collected more of the prior year taxes for delinquencies for 401,000, licenses and permits, 144,000, municipal court, about 26,000, local option sales tax, 340,000. I will say in this category too, and since we'll be talking about reassessment later, of the amount budgeted for Charleston County and Berkeley County, we give back about 1.8 million back to the citizens of those two counties that go against their property tax bill. So even though that category is here, it comes off of the cash that I actually get from those counties once the tax bills are paid. Parks and Rec, we collected right at 77,000. Miscellaneous revenue, 199. Most of that was interest income for the month. And of course, our local hospitality transfer for a total of 1.4. Any questions on any of the revenues or thus far? Impact fees. We had a great month in impact fees. We had a couple of the buildings and Sawmill come in for some permits. So we collected, I meant to look up last year's, but I believe we're close to almost what 100% of our annual collections were last year in impact fees in total. For the residential, Parks and Rec had 27,000, and Fire had 32, municipal had 43. For commercial, which is where real dollars are, 809 was for fire and 420 for municipal. So total year to date and for July is 1.3. And I believe that when I was looking at some other financing options for public safety, I believe last year we were like 1.1 for fire and municipal for the whole year.
Whole year.
So
So right now, those fund balances down at the bottom, Ms. Rhonda, those are all three categories.
yes,
That's what's available
yes,
in each.
yes.
So we naturally still have some outstanding bills from projects we've already done.
Right. And that's one reason why the Creech Associates contract is being paid out of this particular category first.
Right.
We
Okay.
exhaust these fees,
Yes.
municipal. Make sense? Questions? Hospitality and accommodations. We're right on target with hospitality, collecting right at 576,000, which is 9% of our budget. That's consistent with last year. We had expenses of 368,000 for a net revenues over expenses of 207,000 for the month. Local accommodations, we collected right at 40,000. I think that was pretty consistent with last year as well. Any questions on either of those items? Stormwater, I will say I estimated the operating revenues current budget. I could not get to my one document that I had saved that had that total on it. I know that's close, but I don't know the exact number. We collected just over 13,000, had expenses of 121. So we typically are in a deficit position in stormwater this time of year anyhow. Any questions on any of those items? Okay. Next item on the agenda is, we wanted to talk about capital and, Council Lady Johnson Wilson. I'll just have to say, I apologize. This is not in the detail that you would like. It doesn't, identify departments and specific things like that, but I really wanted to get some input from council on what some of the assumptions that I put in, what you would like to see different, and maybe set up to have something kind of together in anticipation of our new town administrator coming in. No offense, Ms. Wallace. But he may have some ideas about how he would like to see things or things he's seen other places as well. But you've all expressed an interest in trying to identify capital and look for a plan to make this go smoothly. So I just, very simply, I just assumed we would take $2.5 million out of our fund balance to start this. It would be this plan looks at an annual appropriation from our budget of about $2.5 million as well. Obviously, all those assumptions can change. And then I wanted to identify some of the uses. A police car purchase is something that we have struggled with, is looking for that year by year. I assumed a 5% increase in police cars. I don't know that they would increase that much, or they might increase more, just depending. I was just trying to get an average. Other department needs, I just assumed at 750,000, and infrastructure, I put at 500,000, which I recognize that is not near enough to do the things that we would like to have done. But I wanted to give you some kind of long-term, this is 6 years, some kind of long-term look at what that would do for us and see where our deficiencies are. The other thing that I have not included, of course, is any debt service on a public safety building if we get to that point. At fire truck replacements, those are obviously costly. They don't happen every year. I kind of feel like maybe we should look at doing lease purchase on those particular items, but I haven't scheduled those into this yet either. I haven't included anything for any additional parks and recreation areas or parks. And of course, I said before, the infrastructure at $500,000 a year is probably not sufficient, based on what I've heard from you guys and what the projects that we have going on.
So if I understand you correctly, Rhonda, you're talking about the police cars and the department needs. You're sort of setting up something like in the old days they call a sinking fund, have some money for future needs.
Sort of, yes, sir. Obviously, whatever we appropriate in the budget, we want to have something to start with, some seed money maybe to start with, and then look at an annual appropriation. Now, we might not have $750,000 worth of other department needs every year. Maybe it's 500 this year, maybe it's $1.5 million next year. I don't know. But yes, sir, the concept is exactly that, a sinking fund to kind of. I hope this is maybe a first step towards what I'd really like to do is be able to develop, and it'll be simple at first too, but try to look at a budget on a 3 to 5 year and then of course extend that. I think it's very difficult to make decisions for a single year for projects that are extend for more than that. And it just feels, it's just difficult, I think. So I would like to get some kind of framework, because I mean, our expenses are going to go up by some amount every year. we have employees, those costs are going to go up. So just having something to look and to plan for the future. So we aren't just looking at 12 months at a time. Any comments, any things you'd like to see different?
I think it's a good idea as well to do. I love the idea of looking beyond 1 year, because I think that that's something that's hurt us in the past. I think that, looking at the numbers that we're talking about here, you know, what we really need to get is a true replacement cycle need for every piece of equipment, basically. The rolling capital is where that's the hill that we die on every time.
Right.
And whether it's Parks and Rec or, you know, Amy's surplus and cars that are 2002s and 2003s in 2024, mind you.
Right.
And, you know, Chief Melcher's trucks are, I know what they cost, I remember, and they've gone nothing but up in the last 2 years too. So, I also know the age of some of those more expensive trucks that we have that were purchased when I was fire chief. They're starting to get a little up in age that we better start planning for, because ladder trucks are, you know, 4 years ago, they were $1.5 million. So for one truck. So
Yeah.
I would guess they're probably over 2 now, but, you know, those are things we need to be preparing for. So.
And
Yeah,
I did get some replacement numbers from the fire department. I just hadn't drilled down
Right.
to make
Yeah.
this, because, you know, I would like to wait till Scott is here and get his input and see what direction he might
But
like to
even
look at.
loaders, you know, loaders that Mark uses, those aren't cheap either. You know, the front end, the wheel loaders and the
Oh, yeah.
trash trucks that are on the roads every day. I mean, those things aren't, you know, they aren't sitting very much. So.
right. I'd agree with him. And I think this is almost like a two-part project, what you have here for the capital funding and this actual budget, but then also having that plan or policy and just to what that replacement cycle looks like. So I think it's two different parts here, but this is, I think you've got a great start here, and just making sure that we do build into that capital funding, the Parks and Rec additions or improvements, the, you know, bike and ped improvements. And there's other things I'm sure that, you know, the police or fire department need other than even vehicles that might be considered a capital item. And that's what we would have to determine too. What is that dollar threshold of when it is considered truly a capital item? I'd imagine it's when we could start depreciating it. But you would know better there. I still, you know, really would love to see us, as we surplus, as fired surpluses or police or Parks and Rec or stormwater, these guys, they surplus items. I'd love to see it go back to their particular departments. I mean, it could just be something, you know, simple purchases, apparatus or whatever it might be. Tasers or something, once they've surplus items, those funds, you know, are back to their department. So I overall think that's a good idea. I think it also helps tracking for, you know, double checks and balances, our insurance policies and anyways, but I think you've got a great start here. I appreciate it.
So it'll definitely be, you know, just a working process, but I did want to bring it to you all and get your input and obviously, you know, asset management is a piece of this that, you know, hopefully as those are developed, then it can incorporate into finance and some of those.
And Scott will probably give some good input here, I'm sure, too.
Any other questions for Ms. Rhonda? Really appreciate this effort. It's going to be a much longer effort, I think, when you talk about the asset management, but it's extremely important for us to have a plan for multiple years down the road, because the cost of doing business is extremely expensive. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for the input. I believe the next item on the agenda is the reassessment review. Johnette Conley has joined us by Zoom. She is definitely the expert. I think all over the state, people call Johnette. She's been involved in county government and worked with cities and counties for, I think, all of her life, I believe. She built the model. Ours is a little more complicated than some because we're located in 3 counties, 2 of which are doing reassessment. One is not doing reassessment. So that's even more the reason to get the extra special expert in the area. So she's gonna kind of talk about, I've given you all a summary of the blended millage, rollback millage calculation that she did. So you should all have that. Johnette's going to explain what rollback is, what rollback isn't, and kind of how the process works, and some of the factors that can affect those items as well. Johnette, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you all hear me?
Thank you, Johnette.
Very good, very good. Good evening, and first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to do this remotely and not have to be on the road tonight because I'm in West Ashley and not in a good area. So I might have been swimming. So I'll start off first by briefly explaining the 3 calculations that you do during a reassessment year. And it's basically the rollback millage plus CPI and growth, and then an alternative millage. So we start off with the rollback millage, and when a lot of times when people hear rollback, they assume that that means we're rolling back to an extent that nobody's taxes will increase at all. And that is simply not what rollback millage is. What that calculation entails is actually taking property that's only been previously taxed before. So everything that was on the tax file last year, and only the levy that was associated with those properties. And it takes those properties now at their new values and redistributes last year's dollars against only those properties to say, what would the millage rate be if we were trying to recalculate only that millage rate for those properties this year with the new values? So when you get to that rate, then you take that rate and you apply it to all the tax property, all of your new tax base. And that kind of gives you a revenue estimate at that point. And then you compare it to your new budget to see whether it's going to suffice or not. Many times it does not. So that then we move to the CPI and the growth being added on to the rollback millage. So you all had, I believe it was a 4.58, Rhonda, was that correct?
That's correct.
So you all had 4.58% that you could add on for your growth in CPI. Most of yours was CPI. And so your rollback rate ended up at 64.8. And with the growth in CPI added, it would have taken it to 67.7. So you could set your millage anywhere from below the rollback, which is hardly ever done, somewhere in the middle between the rollback and CPI plus growth, or at the rollback CPI plus growth. Or in some cases, you can calculate what's an alternative rate, which would have been above that. And some people do that and they claw back millage that they haven't used in the past 3 years. What we got to in talking to staff after we got our calculations done, we talked about staying at 66 mills, and I don't disagree with that. That would be my recommendation at this point for you all after the conversation I had with staff and the fact that there's several reasons for that. You all are using fund balance to balance your operating budget right now, and just hearing the discussion about your capital improvement plan, or you're in the very early stages of trying to start to develop a capital improvement plan. And you're going to have to develop along with that an asset management plan and a replacement plan for some of the things you've been talking about tonight: vehicles, fire trucks, heavy equipment of that sort. And so I have to put my former CFO hat on as well and think about those things. So having said that, you also, there are several factors. We're building an estimated millage on estimated values. And that's important to remember because property tax values are constantly changing every day, literally by the hour. People will apply for 4%. We're getting an influx of new people. You all know that because Somerville is certainly a bedroom community. And so is Berkeley County. You guys have a lot of people that live here and work in the Charleston area. And some of them may not be aware that they can apply for 4% on their homes. And so some of these 6% properties that are currently in your tax base are going to turn to 4% properties, which is going to reduce that estimated revenue. So staying at the 66 mills would allow that wiggle room for those changes to take place. And it would give you the opportunity to get to the end of the fiscal year and then see how your reassessment turned out. And there's always a remedy. If you think you over collected, you wanted to return more back to the taxpayer, you can always reduce your millage the following year. If you didn't collect enough, there's a remedy to allow you to use some of your clawback millage that you didn't use to go ahead and increase your millage if it was needed. So those are some things to think about as you are, because you certainly have some decisions to make. You can set that millage anywhere between the rollback or up to the rollback plus CPI and growth, and honestly even above that. But if you get above that rollback and CPI, there's some special rules you have to follow, and there has to be some specific reasons that you're increasing that millage, and they have to be broken out, listed separately on the tax notice. It gets a whole lot more involved if you go above that rate. But so right now with this, the 66 mills is what I would recommend. You guys also were previously on a calendar year schedule and have changed over in the past couple of years into a fiscal year schedule. And so that changes your cash flow a little bit too. And so you got a lot of things going on, and that sitting still at that 66 mills would allow that to settle out a little bit and kind of see how successful your reassessment is at the end of the fiscal year. And then give you some options to evaluate how you want to move forward at that point. I'm happy.
Janet,
Yes, go ahead.
Could you explain a little bit about how the assessment works as far as attributing a piece of that to each county, looking at
Sure.
our total revenue piece?
Sure. The difficulty and this is not my first time doing the Somerville millage, by the way. When Melinda was there some years ago, I've been there before, and that's how we ended up developing kind of a different worksheet for the town of Somerville. So since you have 3 parts, we're basically doing a weighted calculation. You figure out what portion of Dorchester County makes up your total base, same for Berkeley and the same for Charleston. So I do individual calculations. In other words, I did a reassessment calculation for Dorchester County piece. I did one for the Berkeley piece, and then Charleston's not in reassessment, so it's just a basic millage calculation, which they're your very, very small part of your tax base. Then you figure out the percentage that each county contributes to that total tax base, and that's the percentage of the millage that you take to make up the total millage rate that I'm recommending to you tonight. So yours is a little bit different in that you're having to do separate calculations for each piece of it, and then figure out the weight that each piece of that county is contributing to your millage calculation. Can I answer any questions for you? I know that's a lot to take in, but I think if you look at how your 66 mills has been performing in the past, we know that 66 mills about what it's been bringing in. So we know it's going to bring in some additional revenue. And we know that the way if you use 66 mills now, that's going to give a little bit of wiggle room for those assessment changes that are going to take place in Berkeley and Charleston and in Dorchester County rather, and still allow you some extra revenue. These are estimates, and a lot can happen in a tax year. And that's why I'm thinking that it's best that you guys stay put at the 66 mills. But I'm happy to answer any questions otherwise.
Council members, any questions?
I have a lot of questions. And I would venture to guess that the vast majority of people in our town do not understand this. Okay, so let me just so I'm clear, John, and thank you for being here, by the way.
Sure.
So the rollback millage, without considering CPI growth, would be 64.8%, right?
64.8, yes, sir. 64.8 mills.
Okay, and so if we apply the rollback plus CPI plus growth, we get 67.7,
Yes, sir.
and you're recommending 66%, which is what it currently is.
Yes.
Okay. Now, no county or town can enjoy an increase in revenue based purely on assessment, right?
Right. In other words, you cannot experience what they call a windfall,
Mhm.
but they don't define a windfall. And typically a windfall would have to be, in my opinion, and I've never seen it happen, but a windfall would have to be some significant error in the calculations where you really exceeded your revenue collections. In other words, there's been instances years ago in some different counties and different municipalities, but one that comes to mind is, let's say the assessor, and certainly we have great assessors, so we don't expect this to happen. But let's say that the assessor fat fingered a mobile home that was supposed to be $10,000 and a mobile home was put in the tax file for $1 million. So then a property tax bill is done on $1 million. We think we have $1 million piece of property when in fact we have a $10,000 piece of property. In that case, your revenue would go down. So you would have a loss of revenue, but the opposite can happen. So it's mainly errors and that sort of thing that would cause that to happen, or just being grossly off of the calculations, which I don't think we are, because that was one of the things is that when I did the math and did the calculations, I got in the ballpark of where your millage already was, and that made sense.
Okay, I don't know of any property in town that didn't increase year over year at least 15%. So if we keep the millage at the current rate, are we not effectively increasing revenue by 15%?
You are increasing the millage above the rollback rate, yes. So it is technically a tax increase above the rollback millage rate. And so, and I agree that most of the properties in Berkeley and Dorchester most absolutely went up.
Yeah, I don't know of any that went down.
No. And so even, keeping the same at 66, of course, if a property didn't change value, then their tax notice should be the same. But going to the, let's say a home, I ran a couple of examples. Let's say a $250,000 home went up by 10%. Using 66 mills would be like a $66 increase. But that is prior to your local option sales tax offsetting it. So it's always hard because so many of the properties are unique in how much they went up, and they're unique in value. So some are going to, for the most part, if you stay at 66 mills, yes, most are going to realize some tax increase unless the local option credit factor offsets it more than it normally does. But also in a reassessment year, unless your local option sales tax dollars go up at the same rate, you now have more property you need to spread those dollars over. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind too.
So in theory, if we adopted the rollback millage rate at 64.8%, our revenue would stay neutral. In theory, I know there's pluses and minuses and there's outliers.
Yes, it would more or less stay neutral. I mean, there may be some gain, honestly, because of the new properties that have not been taxed before. Because remember, the rollback rate really only takes into account what the levy was last year.
On last year's properties.
Right, on last year's properties and last year's tax levy. So that's how that new rate is calculated. So you would get some additional revenue, yes, from the new properties that have never been taxed at all.
And the CPI and growth that you've added here, it looks like it's 67.7. That's not taken into account any of the new development or the annexation or all of the additional development that's generating tax revenue as well, correct?
No, the CPI, that millage rate is literally just the 64.8 mills plus the CPI and growth. So in other words, that's not a millage calculated from assessed values. It is literally just adding a percentage of growth to the rollback rate. But then you take that millage to calculate the revenue, you would take these 3 different millages and multiply them against your tax base to get an estimated revenue from each one.
Mhm. And based on your projections here, looks like from 2023 to 2024, if we don't roll back the millage and knowing that property values did increase 15% and more, and I think that's what state law caps it at for the assessment. It looks like a resident would pay about $200 more a year on their taxes. Is that what I'm reading correct on your assessment?
Well, depending on are you
Wait.
talking about a $500,000 home or?
But based on the $500,000 at a
Yes.
4% owner
Yes,
occupant assessment.
yes. If the house went up 15%, yes. And again, that's before whatever rebates you give them back on local option sales tax.
So if we keep it the same, as I understand, some residents will pay around 15% more on their tax bill.
It's possible, yes.
Do we need a motion on this?
Yes, I think we do need a motion on that.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we move this to full council to allow for public input.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a couple, just comments for discussion purposes amongst us. I understand what everybody's saying as far as the, increase in revenue and whatnot and what we're doing. And Ms. Conley, thank you so much for being here as well. I do want to thank you as well, and for your information and the recommendation about the 66 mills staying where it is currently. I think back over the last 12, 13 years, our millage rate has changed every year, up or down. We've been kind of chasing some kind of, I don't even know what we've been chasing, but we've been chasing something, trying to put a pin the millage rate on the donkey, so to speak. And with doing that has not allowed us to be able to plan more than 1 year at a time. That millage rate changing, fluctuating from 1 year to the next. We've never had a good handle of what our actuals were going to be at the end of a year, to be able to project what was going to happen in the year ahead, the next year beyond that, and the next year beyond that. So that's why I would support us leaving our millage rate exactly where it is. I know it's going to be a little bit of increase, and it may be that we get through this year, we suffer through this year. I don't remember how many unfunded requests or needs we had last year in this budget we just passed. I want to say it was a couple $1 million worth, but so this working through this 1 year would allow us the opportunity to kind of maybe let things level off a little bit and see where they are and see where we actually are, so we can plan down the road. Maybe down the road we can reduce that millage rate back, but we don't know unless we put some science behind it. We don't have the science because we don't have the data, because we've been on a roller coaster ride with our millage rate for the past 10 or 12 years.
We just got our S&P rating back just within a couple months for having a good audit. We didn't even have every fund audited. I think we need to get through another budget cycle and make sure that we continue to have good audits. Like we finally got that rating back, and before we go increasing.
Can I ask a question? When do we have to give the county our millage rate?
They haven't let me know that. Typically I would send a letter by the middle of August, but they don't have their data together. So I'm sure it's just sometime before they get ready to punch that number in to send the bills out.
I know with Berkeley, it's typically mid-August.
Yeah, I know I have to send, Janet has requested, I think, August 15th or.
Yeah, it's usually around that time frame.
So basically, we do need to make a decision this month.
So, two things. In the budget, I think our increase in property tax revenue for our budget was like 12% is what was part of our budget over last year. Now, we did collect a little more than, at that time, I didn't know, maybe 5%. So our budget does include a little more than flat, which it won't be flat anyhow because there is growth. But that's one of the things. And then the use of fund balance is, the other factor, which we did that and I feel comfortable doing that because I do feel like I'm conservative in the revenue and I want to be that.
I agree 100%. I think just what, one of the best things we could do as a town moving forward is to leave it alone for a little while to see how exactly where we are. Like I said, I already said, I kind of want to beat it in the ground, but that's just one more thing that will just kind of help us plan for the future. If we know where we are, we'll never know where we can go if we don't know where we're starting from. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say.
And I agree with you. And there's a lot of things that we did not fund that we need. So I agree.
I don't know that we've also looked at the budget close enough to see where we could cut back in areas either, in my opinion.
Let me just say 66 may well be the right number. But if we approve a millage, anything above the rollback millage rate, we are effectively voting on a tax increase without any public input. And I'm happy to vote on 66 as the mill rate, as long as we do it at a full council meeting.
I agree.
Not here tonight.
Totally good with that.
You also have in your information, I think that was passed out, you have a few examples of basically the various millages and compared to last year. So you have a frame of reference too for different properties.
So would we need a motion just to put this to full council for a Thursday?
There's already a
Motion in a second to send it to full council. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next is discussion and request for staff to review, implement, or revise the merit pay policy and performance evaluation policy provided.
All right, this was brought up by Councilwoman Johnson Wilson, so I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay. As we were prepare for the new and improved vision plan, I believe implementing this policy will help lay the foundation, at least for our town staff. I think the police and the fire already have their own policies that seem to be working well. An annual performance evaluation will allow our staff members and department heads to openly communicate and document the goals and standards that will align with our vision plan. It will allow for the challenges as well as any needed training to be formally addressed, establishing a system of accountability for targeted training and development. I believe we want to retain and recruit the best, and a merit pay policy can motivate employees to perform at their best when seeing a direct correlation between their efforts and their compensation. The many employees and department heads we have that provide exemplary service should be recognized, compensated, and bonused accordingly, while others may need additional training or coaching to improve their performance. These evaluations will help identify where our strengths and our opportunities lie. And overall, these employee evaluations and a merit pay policy will foster a culture of collaboration and shared purpose.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members?
No, I think it's a good thing. I've always supported the merit raises. And I think it does two things. I think I've said before, like at Bosch, you know what the average percentage of a raise is. If you get more than that, you're doing well. If you get that, you're just doing okay. If you get less than that, you need to change your ways or find a new job. It's just advance warning.
And Mr. Mayor, I would like to say, we have discussed this off and on over, the time that I've been on council. And, I think that this is great that we're actually going to ask staff, to do this and we can really follow through with it and have a set plan in action. So I'm really excited about this.
So,
Ms. Wallace, can you kind of explain to us or describe to us what the current process is for evaluations?
Certainly, over the years, we have traditionally, our council has traditionally decided on a year-by-year basis. So it's been done several different ways. It's either a COLA, a cost of living adjustment that's done across the board for all employees, or a merit, which is always based on performance evaluations, or nothing at all, or a combination of COLA and merit. For this year's budget, you all allowed for a 3% COLA, which was across the board for all employees, and also a 5% merit, which will come mid-year. But based on the fact that it is a merit increase, it would be tied to performance. So we have always, if there was a merit increase in the budget, it was always staff's understanding that that would be tied to a performance evaluation.
Is there currently an annual performance review?
Not for all departments, not a required
Okay.
performance review. But many of the departments do conduct them.
And Ms. Wallace, since this discussion has started, you've had Mr. Grant in HR working on a draft as well?
That's correct. Yes, based on the 5%, the proposed 5% at mid-year, we pulled out some of the employee evaluation forms we've traditionally used over, the last probably 10 or 15 years. And he's just taken a look at what some other municipalities and counties are doing, just so maybe we can update the forms that we've been using.
so if I may ask for a motion that the staff, draft a merit pay policy and a performance evaluation policy and provide it back to council.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Authorization to issue a purchase order to Purvis Systems up to the amount of $388,400 for the purchase of an automated dispatch and station alerting for the fire department. Funds to come from general funds, fire department capital.
Move for approval.
I make a motion, we approve it.
I'll
All right, we
second.
have a motion and it sounded like a second at the same time. Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question. This doesn't have anything to do with dispatch, does it? Pretty good.
Actually, yes, it's actually improved dispatch quite a bit.
This is gonna take a lot of pressure off of dispatch. This will allow us to get in the street a lot faster while they're taking more information. It's an automated dispatch system, so we can actually get in the street 2 to 3 minutes faster than what we would normally would.
I guess my question is, we haven't answered the question whether we're gonna combine with Dorchester.
Oh, this has nothing to do with that. No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Would a system like this typically, I guess, due to the amount, would be considered a capital item? Is that right, Rhonda? Yeah. Okay. And so right now, that's going to come from their general fund because there's not a capital fund established yet.
We budgeted this item in
our
budget, so it would be, yes, but capital is out of the general fund at this point. That's correct.
Yeah. Right. I remember us budgeting for it. So we have the budget retreat. Now, if something comes up, a few months later that they need, it's urgent that they really need it, but we didn't budget for it, then what happens at that point?
it comes before council and you can decide, if you want to do it, if you want to take it from fund balance, or if there's another source of funds that you can take it from.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the purpose system? I'll just note that I'm excited to see that dollar figure compared to what we discussed during our budget retreat. That's much lower, so that's a good thing. All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Authorization for the town administrator to enter into a contract with Creech and Associates and to issue a purchase order not to exceed $3,895,200 to complete the design of the municipal public safety complex. Funds to come from municipal impact fees and Midtown TIF bond proceeds.
I'll make a motion. We approve that.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just like to say, I love the fact that we're moving forward. This is the first time we got this. far.
Picking up those keys.
So I love the fact that we're moving forward as well, because it seems like that's been a long time in the making, but $3,895,000, I think, is a lot. As we're looking to increase our revenue and increase what people's taxes bills are by 15%, does any staff member have the authority, or has anybody tried to renegotiate large $4 million contracts like this?
$8 million for a professional 8% is standard on this kind of contract. Also, if the building costs less, they get paid less.
So 8% is the standard across the board. For all
Actually, up to 10% is the standard. I agree, $4 million is an awful lot for design fees. Wish my firm was doing it. But it is standard.
Okay.
I know, Mr. Neal, you did the negotiations. Anything you want to share with council?
And it does include architecture, engineering, more than just architects for the whole design.
We have a permit ready set, correct?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I got one more question. That'll include, are they gonna take care of going through our town processes too? Is with that's part of their contract as well? Okay. Very good.
And will all of the funds come from the municipal impact fees and Midtown TIF? Right, for this course. So that will be covered totally by that. Okay.
All right, anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Authorization for the town administrator to enter into a contract with Infrastructure Consulting Engineering and issue a purchase order not to exceed $900,000 to perform design work for the Main Street Resiliency Project. Funds to come from designated state earmark funds.
I'm going to recuse myself from the gavel and pass it down to my Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll make a motion that we move this forward.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second on item 5G. Is there any other discussion?
Is this also 8% standard?
Actually, on this one, it's 10%, and we negotiated down to 7.5.
Okay. Was that you that did that? Well, thank you very much.
I'm late to this game. What was the selection process? How many qualified bidders did we have for this process?
So we had
And
10.
who was on a selection committee?
Sure. So we had 10 submittals and we interviewed 5. The selection committee was made up of myself, the town administrator, the town engineer, and the planning director for the interviews and the review of the proposals.
So you went out for a request for qualifications, I assume, and then you negotiated a price with the one you thought was most capable.
Correct.
Did they present concept drawings
They
in that
did.
process?
Actually, just about all of them did. we requested that, so.
Okay.
as
And
part
what
of the
was it about
process.
ICE that set them ahead of?
It was the
everybody
total
else?
package. They've got, great subs as well as ICE. They've got extensive experience in these type of projects. And they've got a local office. And the other important factor of this project is we're going to be, working closely with Dorchester County. And they're doing projects on both ends of our projects. So it's important that we have continuous, coordination for both of these projects. And this firm is also on their approved list bids as well. So it was another factor.
So I know they have an office in North Charleston and one in
Right.
Daniel Island. Who's the lead engineer on this project?
It's going to be,
I know they submit resumes,
Buck,
but you
yeah,
often don't get the guy on the resume.
Buck. I'm trying to remember his name. He's got an unusual last name.
Okay.
Buckaloo. Mr. Buckaloo will be the lead. Jeff Buckaloo.
Very good.
When the RFQ was put out, did that go before council to vote on that?
On the RFQ.
Yeah.
To post an RFQ for these services? I'm just,
I'm not sure. Yeah, I
Seems
can't
like we
remember
did.
either.
I
It's been a while.
feel like we did around budget
It
retreat
was
time.
when, after we got the first grant in the bank is when we started moving forward on it. So when we had the money in the bank.
Or that mid-year update. I think the new council member orientation back in January, I think is one of the times we talked about this.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Discussion? Okay, we have a first and a second on this. All in favor? Say aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Authorization for staff to modify contract with Michael Baker International in the amount of $43,975 for services on the North Cedar Street Extension Project to include additional right-of-way relocation services and signal warrant analysis. This is to be funded by the road fund and reimbursement requests through the IGA with Berkeley County.
I make a motion, we approve this.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Authorization to award a construction contract for the Central Avenue Sidewalk Phase One to First Construction Management LLC in the amount of $765,113.39 to be funded by designated state earmark funds in the amount of $400,000 and the balance from the Sidewalk Capital Fund.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we authorize this expenditure.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Mr. Arnold, what was our sidewalk fund this year in the budget? Do you remember?
Yeah, I wanted to get up, so I want to make sure we were very transparent because
Right.
Ms. Garten Smith might not appreciate me if I wasn't, but it was 500,000.
Right.
And we kind of was thinking that was Lee Street. Lee Street didn't make it to the chopping block quite fast enough. But if we want, if we can find another source, we were really hoping that the county will be able to help us out on this. So,
Mhm.
so we don't have another source to fund Central Avenue except for our 500 that we put in the budget at this point.
So the 500 that's earmarked for Lee Street is going to Central Avenue.
no, we had 500.
We didn't have it really earmarked any particular way,
Okay.
but that was certainly in our discussion. I mean,
Okay.
we've been waiting on Lee Street for quite some time, and I know that was part of our discussions on that.
Yeah.
But we knew it had to be redesigned and some other things.
So we had the Bike and Ped Committee submit a sidewalk list to us. And this is going to take up most of the $500,000 we budgeted for. So that list they submitted to us, we're not gonna really get any sidewalks done on that. Is that correct, what I'm understanding?
Well, there won't be any money. I haven't worked with that list or anything, but there won't be any money left much in that particular category.
We may have some plans, some money to develop plans and stuff like that left over enough to take it that far down the road.
Well, we've been talking about the Central Avenue project now for, I'm going to say a couple of years at least. And so that was already at the top of our list with Lee Street.
I think the issue with this one, why we moved this one up to an urgency mode was we already had plans and so it was already a permanent project. And if we hang around much longer, the permit's gonna expire, then we'll be in
Expired, yes.
the same boat that we were in with Lee Street. And we've already spent dollars on this, invested money in this planning and I don't even remember how much that was. And it'd be a shame just to throw that away when we have a project that's ready to go.
Well, I
Our
think,
state legislature was so gracious
Yeah, to give us
and
400,000.
getting us some funds to help us with this project.
yeah, I agree. I think in terms of number of citizens served, this project is far more important.
Do you know, did we go to the county to try and get their assistance in funding
I
some of?
believe we did.
We did, multiple occasions on multiple fronts. Part of this connects to their, Parsons Road improvements, which ties into our North Maple Street improvements, which also ties into their Central Avenue improvements. So this is a essential piece to connect all of those items into, town. However, they are at a situation where they would have to issue a bond anticipation note to fund something outside of their program. And I don't think they really want to be in that situation for this. I think our best bet, Ms. Miley, mentioned that we need some management support. If they were willing to support us and help with the construction, engineering and inspection and management. And we can still seek funding from them since it ties into their system and they have a revenue stream. But I kind of agree with the fact that if we don't move forward, I think we're at an opportunity where we could lose money that we've already kind of invested.
So once we vote on this, though, we can still continue to try and get the county to assist with funding.
Oh,
on this.
absolutely.
Okay. And who does that? Is that?
All of us.
Oh.
You're looking at us.
Then let's do that. All right.
I've already
Thank-
made a few phone calls myself.
Thank you.
Been begging.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next is executive session, receive legal advice regarding the employee handbook.
I move that we go into executive session to receive legal advice regarding the employee handbook.
Second.
Motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in